In the morning mist of Boston's suburbs lay an upscale residential area. Among the orderly rows of white houses, the Thompsons' two-story home stood out particularly. Beyond the meticulously maintained lawn wafted the fragrance of Margaret's carefully tended heirloom roses. The spacious garden featured a fountain, said to have been inherited from the previous generation. In the living room, breakfast time was beginning as usual. On the dining table lay a traditional American breakfast, lovingly prepared by Margaret. Bacon and eggs, whole wheat toast, and the Thompson family's hereditary silverware. Everything was perfectly arranged. "It's only natural to uphold this house's traditions," Margaret said, watching Linda's chopstick use with cold eyes. "Western meals have Western etiquette. Especially in this house." "Yes, you're quite right," Linda quietly corrected her grip on her fork. After 5 years of marriage, she still found herself struggling with the customs of this house. The proper manners befitting an upscale neighborhood, the complex rules of neighborly relations, and above all, the strict hierarchy within this house. "My son deserved a more refined woman," Margaret sighed, taking a sip of tea from her antique china. "David graduated from Harvard, and yet—" Her words trailed off, but their implication was clear. Linda, a mere office worker at an accounting firm, was deemed unworthy of the Thompson family status. Her state university education was a constant source of dissatisfaction in Margaret's eyes. "Mother," Christine's voice took on a wheedling tone. "I understand this house better than anyone. I'm the true heir to this house." The 29-year-old sister-in-law worked in real estate while living at home. 3 months after her broken engagement, she still hadn't recovered. Though she dressed in expensive designer clothes and seemed to lead an elegant life at home, there was always anxiety lurking in her eyes. "How can you be married when I can't even?" Christine's words were always tinged with envy. The pressure of fertility treatments, funded by her brother, seemed to be wearing her down. That evening, a family meeting was called. After 5 years of fertility treatments, Linda was finally pregnant. The dinner meeting at an upscale restaurant was meant to be a celebration, at least on the surface. "I'm pregnant," Linda announced, and David beamed with joy. As a successful IT company manager, he seemed to be savoring the joy of finally becoming a father. But Margaret's expression was clouded. "A home birth is safest," Margaret immediately insisted. "Thompson children have always been born in this house for generations. And we simply can't do something as unseemly as going to a hospital. We must consider what the neighbors would think." Christine, meanwhile, suddenly burst into tears. But I. Her 4 years of fertility treatments had yet to bear fruit. Rumors suggested that her engagement had ended due to this very anxiety. That night, rumors had already begun spreading through the neighborhood. The Asian daughter-in-law was pregnant, and a Thompson heir would be born. Margaret's friends were gossiping about it at their afternoon tea parties. Linda's purchased baby supplies kept disappearing. Baby clothes, diapers, bottle supplies. When questioned, everyone just shook their heads in denial. The second-floor nursery in progress had somehow become a storage room. "You should just do what Mother says, David," overwhelmed with overtime work, was distant to his wife's concerns. Traditions are important. Besides, we have Mother and Christine's situations to consider. The weight of monthly mortgage assistance and his sister's fertility treatment costs seemed to be binding his heart. Linda nodded silently. She already knew how to survive in this house. Her parents' home was a 3-hour drive away. But now, that distance felt impossibly far. After the pregnancy was discovered, Linda's daily life began to slowly distort. It started with small things. The baby clothes Margaret had bought were all black. Black is practical. Stains don't show, she said with a cunning smile. Fearing crying at night, the crib was placed in the basement storage, and all toys were rejected as bad for education. The ultrasound photos from the obstetrician disappeared from the desk drawer. I haven't seen them, Christine's voice carried a hint of pleasure. Even when Linda brought new prints home, they would invariably vanish. Eventually, she began keeping important photos at her office desk. Items kept disappearing from the closet where birth preparation supplies were stored, week after week. Bottles, diapers, baby powder. You really don't take care of things, Margaret said. Even when Linda bought new ones, they would vanish somewhere. A neighborhood housewife discovered unused high-end baby items thrown away at the local garbage collection site. One morning, Linda found the pink baby clothes she had carefully chosen slashed to pieces. I wonder if a cat got in, Margaret feigned concern. However, everyone knew there was no cat in this house. The cut edges of the fabric formed a distorted shape, as if to strangle a baby's neck. The harassment extended beyond the house. Your daughter is making my son miserable, late-night calls began coming to Linda's parents' home. Her mother asked worriedly, "Are you really all right?" On the other end of the line, someone could be heard quietly laughing. It always coincided with Christine's return home time. Anonymous accounts posted defamatory comments on Linda's social media. An unsuitable marriage, a stain on the family lineage, Asian poisoner. The writing style of the posts seemed familiar somehow. Margaret's usual tone, Christine's distinctive expressions. Going back through the accounts revealed obsessive posts dating from David and Linda's wedding day. Anonymous tip-offs were made to the accounting firm. False allegations that a pregnant employee was leaking confidential information. During the HR investigation, Linda found Christine's real estate company business card in her office desk drawer. I never handed out such cards, Christine's words were clearly lies. Interference with medical professionals also began. Linda's obstetrician started receiving anonymous complaint calls. Appointments were canceled by someone, and test results stopped arriving. Right then, a sudden decision for home birth was made. It's Thompson family tradition, Margaret declared imperiously. We can't trust hospitals. I know an excellent midwife. She's overseen safe births in this house for generations. Sarah Wilson was indeed an experienced midwife. However, her eyes revealed excessive deference to Margaret. Leave everything to me, no concerns, her words carried an unnaturally transparent quality. Then came the decisive event. David's overseas business trip coincided with the due date. "It's a project I can't cancel," her husband said apologetically. "Mother and the midwife will be with you, so it should be fine, right? Besides, this is a chance for promotion." At those words, Margaret's eyes gleamed ominously. Christine wore a smile that suggested she was plotting something. Their expressions revealed the joy of an awaited opportunity arriving. As the due date approached, the atmosphere in the house grew heavier. The black baby clothes placed in Linda's room. The previous generation's memorial photographs on the walls. And at night, the sound of whispered conversations downstairs. New locks were installed on the entrance, and Linda's cell phone frequently lost reception. One night, Linda accidentally overheard Margaret and Christine's conversation in the kitchen. "We can't let this child taint our family's blood." "Yes, Mother. We must do something about it. Taking the child away will be simple. Let's think of a way that won't be noticed by anyone." That night, Linda seriously considered running away for the first time. But where could she go? Her parents' home was far, and her friends lived far from this upscale neighborhood. Even if she wanted to call a taxi, her phone had no signal. The windows that should have been emergency exits had somehow been fitted with locks. The day before David left for his business trip, Linda made one final plea. "Please, cancel your trip. I feel like something terrible is going to happen." But her husband answered with his usual gentle smile. "Let's trust Mother. She's thinking of you. Besides, this work is important for our family's future." That night, moonlight reflected off the garden fountain through the bedroom window. Margaret's precious roses cast eerie shadows, like baring their fangs. And downstairs, someone was talking in hushed tones. Those voices sounded terrifyingly cheerful. Labor began at 6 in the morning, as the morning mist settled in. Linda awoke in the dimly lit master bedroom. A dull pain shot through her abdomen. The contractions were still far apart. Outside the window, a light rain had begun to fall, and Margaret's precious roses dripped with dewdrops. The inherited fountain's water made an ominous melody. "So it's begun." When Margaret entered the room, her voice carried an unnatural excitement. "I've called Sarah." She held what appeared to be some kind of herbal medicine package in her hand. The midwife Sarah Wilson arrived an hour later. Her expression carried a somewhat uncomfortable shadow. "Everything's progressing normally. But it will still take some time." At these words, Margaret cast a meaningful glance at Sarah. As the intervals between contractions grew shorter, the atmosphere in the house changed. Someone was quietly talking downstairs. Occasionally, Christine's laughter could be heard. At the entrance, a suspicious man pretending to be a delivery person repeatedly rang the doorbell, seemingly trying to check on Linda's condition. "Pain is natural," Margaret said coldly. "We've all endured it. Though with your lowly bloodline, you might not be able to handle it." By noon, the contractions were 10 minutes apart. Sarah continued her examinations carefully, but there was a slight hesitation in her touch. "Everything's normal. But if anything happens..." The experienced midwife's eyes occasionally showed signs of fear. Her words were cut off by Margaret's sharp gaze. "Trust our way," her voice held some terrible conviction. At 3 in the afternoon, Linda's screams echoed through the house. "Hospital. I want to go to the hospital." Sharp pains shot through her. But Margaret shook her head. "Are you planning to break this house's tradition? Or do you want to do something vulgar like your family would?" The water Christine brought as refreshment had a bitter taste. Linda instinctively refused it. "It's okay, I don't need to drink." A faint white powder had settled at the bottom of the glass. "How stubborn," Margaret's eyes narrowed. "You don't even understand this house's ways, yet you tricked my precious son into marriage." Her words dripped with years of hatred. By 6 in the evening, the contractions had reached their peak. Anxiety showed on Sarah's face. "Just a little more." "Push," her voice trembled. "I have children too." "So." The rest of her words were drowned out by Margaret's cough. "Maybe it's impossible for you," Margaret whispered. "Someone who doesn't carry this house's blood." "Yes, you'll always be an outsider." An unusual tension hung in the master bedroom turned delivery room. The previous generation's photographs on the wall seemed to judge Linda with their eyes. The pile of black baby clothes cast ominous shadows. Christine was muttering something like an incantation under her breath. Is the baby okay?" Linda's voice trembled. A mother's intuition in labor warned of something terrible approaching. "Leave everything to us," Christine smiled eerily. "This child's fate is already decided." At 8 in the evening, the baby finally cried out. A thin but certain cry. Sarah efficiently completed the procedures and laid the baby in the crib. However, at that moment, her hands were shaking abnormally. "I must leave for now. I'll return later," Sarah left with an expression suggesting she had something to say. Her back showed signs of regret. She clearly hesitated while descending the stairs, as if knowing something irreversible was about to happen. Exhausted, Linda was drifting in and out of consciousness. The sound of rain echoed like a lullaby. However, even within that comfortable sound, some ominous melody mixed in. Then came the moment of fate. At 9 o'clock, the sound of a car engine could be heard downstairs. Had Sarah returned? But the next moment, Linda's blood ran cold. Hushed conversations at the entrance. An unfamiliar man's voice. And Christine's triumphant laughter. Margaret quietly opened the room's door. In her hand was what appeared to be some kind of paper. Adoption papers, perhaps. Christine stood behind her, holding some large cloth bag. The fabric had ominous red stains. "This child is a burden. A stain on our bloodline," Margaret's voice was unnervingly calm. "We should just get rid of such a child. As punishment for ruining my son's life." Christine slowly approached the crib. "What a cute baby," her voice carried in strange attachment. "I'll take care of it. I'll take it outside. This child should have been mine in the first place." Linda tried to scream, but no voice came out. Her body wouldn't move. Perhaps the effect of something mixed in the water. Only her consciousness captured the terror-filled reality. Christine lifted the baby and tried to put it in the cloth bag. At that moment, the baby let out a loud cry, as if sensing its own fate. "Hurry," Margaret's voice rose with impatience. "Before someone notices. The car is ready." The two ran down the stairs. The sound of the entrance door opening. Car doors closing. The engine sound fading into the darkness. Behind it, another car started up as if following. Linda grabbed her cell phone with trembling hands. But the screen showed no service. The sound of electronic interference, suggesting the presence of a signal jammer, could be heard from somewhere. In the garden visible from the window, the roses were beaten by rain, casting black shadows. And the fountain's water sounded like a baby's cry. That sound gradually faded away, replaced by someone's eerie laughter. When Sarah Wilson returned, the bedroom was already empty. Scattered bedding, an empty crib, and black baby clothes fallen on the floor. Her scream echoed through the silent house. "I'm calling the police." Sarah pulled out her cell phone with shaking hands. "I'm also responsible. I should have noticed." 10 minutes later, police sirens broke the silence of the residential area. Residents of the upscale neighborhood peered curiously through gaps in their curtains. Rumors had already begun to spread. "Mrs. Thompson, please calm down and tell us what happened," the police officer's voice was steady. But Linda couldn't form proper words. The baby. While investigators searched the house, Sarah testified to everything. Margaret's unnatural behavior, Christine's abnormal obsession, and suspicions about drugs mixed in the water. "I should have stopped it." At 10 o'clock, Linda's screams echoed again. A disturbing journal had been found in Christine's room. My baby only. I can't accept my brother's child. This child is mine. I'm starting a new life. No one will interfere." On the edge of the journal, written in deranged letters, were photos with an unknown man. A scene that looked like a transaction in a dark alley. And the back view of a woman holding a baby. "We're checking the security camera footage," the police officer announced. 2 cars headed north. One black sedan. The other. At that moment, Linda's cell phone rang. The screen showed her husband's name. David. "Linda. What happened?" Her husband's voice was distraught. "I got a call from your parents. Mother." Linda explained everything. With a trembling voice, she conveyed these horrific events. On the other end of the phone, David's heavy breathing could be heard. "I'm coming back right now." His voice was more emotional than she'd ever heard. "Go to Mother's place. I will never forgive this." David returned. His face was distorted with anger. "Why didn't I notice?" He punched the wall. Why didn't I?" Police investigation revealed new facts. Christine had opened multiple bank accounts over the past month. And suspicious money transfers with the unknown man. Suspicions of human trafficking disguised as adoption emerged. "We're tracking your mother's cell phone location," the police officer reported. "The signal is on the suburban highway. Moving at considerable speed." "The old house," David shouted. "If mother's going to hole up somewhere, it must be there." At midnight, the group departed for the old house. Police cars escorted David's car from front and back. They sped down the midnight highway without sirens. "Why?" Linda whispered from the passenger seat. "Why did this happen?" "It was all my fault." David's voice was dark and heavy. "I allowed financial control. I turned a blind eye to mother's abnormal obsession and Christine's jealousy." The rain gradually intensified. The sound of rain hitting the windshield seemed like a baby's cry. As the wipers desperately cleared the rain, David desperately kept his foot on the accelerator. At 2 a.m, the group arrived at their destination. The Thompson family's old mansion. A dim light shone from the windows. And in the parking lot were 2 familiar cars. "They're inside," the police officer confirmed through binoculars. 3 figures in the first-floor living room. At that moment, a baby's cry could be heard from inside the mansion. Linda's body trembled. That was definitely the voice. "We're moving in." As police officers prepared their positions, David stepped forward. "Let me talk to them first. They're my mother and sister." The front door opened. There stood Margaret, tears streaming down her face. "David." Her voice trembled. I was wrong." In the living room, Christine sat against the wall, still holding the baby. "Brother." Her eyes had an abnormal gleam. "This child should be mine." "Christine," David spoke quietly but firmly. "Give the baby back." But I." Christine's arms slowly lost their strength. "I wanted a baby too. I thought it was for the house." Margaret sobbed. "For preserving the bloodline, but we did something unforgivable." As police officers carefully restrained the 2 women, Linda held her child. The small warmth. A steady heartbeat. That warmth confirmed that everything was all right. "Mother," Christine, David's voice carried quiet anger. "We're no longer family. This is the end." A week after the incident, David visited the old house with his lawyer. Margaret and Christine were still not out on bail. "All support will be terminated," he announced calmly. The stack of documents detailed the cessation of mortgage payments, fertility treatment funding, and renunciation of inheritance rights. "These are the last papers for our family." A "for sale" sign already stood in front of the White House in the upscale neighborhood. The roses were beginning to wither, and the fountain remained still. The neighborhood buzzed with rumors about the attempted kidnapping. "To think the Thompson bloodline would end like this," the elderly neighborhood ladies whispered. But those 2 went too far. Christine's real estate company immediately terminated her contract. Her fertility treatment savings would likely be seized as settlement money. The amount would significantly constrain her future. "I needed a baby," her words during interrogation made the police officers shudder. "Even if I had to take someone else's child." The rest wasn't recorded. Margaret fainted upon hearing her son's decision. "This house has our history." But her words reached no one's heart. She who had once prided herself on her upper-class lineage now lived alone in a modest suburban apartment, barely maintaining her lifestyle with part-time work. None of her former friends contacted her. David and Linda settled into a new 3-story house downtown. Bright sunlight streamed in, and the crib was fitted with lovely pastel-colored bedding. "No one will ever take our happiness away again," David vowed while holding the baby. Free from years of family pressure, his expression had regained its serenity. Relations with Linda's family were also healing. "You really did well," her mother's words brought Linda to tears. Her parents now visited on weekends. The baby grew steadily. Its smiles gradually healed the dark shadows of the past. The new family photos reflected genuine bonds, not bloodlines or traditions. Christine, after making bail, moved to another state. All her social media accounts were deleted, and she reportedly started a new life under a different identity. Rumors suggested she had given up on fertility treatments and was exploring adoption. Margaret's fall was more dramatic. Residents of the upscale neighborhood continued their cruel gossip whenever they spotted her working part-time at the supermarket. Well, karma comes around. Every Sunday, she attended church. People witnessed her spending long hours in the confessional, seeking forgiveness. However, divine forgiveness doesn't come easily. Letters from Margaret piled up in David's desk drawer. But he never opened a single one. The past should stay in the past. The old house was bought by a young couple. The rose garden was demolished and transformed into a modern landscape. The previous generation's memorial photographs and black baby clothes were all disposed of. A new family story begins here. A tale of true bonds, freed from the pressure of bloodlines and traditions. The family photo displayed in the living room, showing the baby's smile, suggested a bright future. Sometimes, David would mutter to himself, "I never noticed until the end. Mother and sister's madness. But this is our new beginning." A year after the incident, Linda became pregnant with their second child. This time, no one's pressure, no one's madness would threaten this happiness. The new life surely foretold a new morning.